Years ago, my sister and brother-in-law uh, went to a very nice neighborhood looking for a house. And the house that they found was beautiful on the outside. But once they went into the house, they discovered that it was quite a different picture. The woman who had lived there, Betty Lumpkin, had been there for 50, 60 years. And somewhere along the line, Betty had decided that she was going to collect things. And by the time my sister and brother-in-law moved into that house, there was just a path that went from the front door through the dining room into the kitchen. There was a place for Betty to eat her dinner or lunch or whatever. And then there was a very narrow path for her to get to the bathroom and ultimately to her bedroom. The entire rest of that house was filled floor to ceiling with junk. Betty was a hoarder. I'm sure that every one of us has a little bit of clutter in our lives, some more than others, few as crazy as Betty might have been, but keeping things and living with clutter is a problem that we face every day. I think everyone who's ever had to move a pile from one place to another to make room to sit down and eat their breakfast, or maybe to look for something that they couldn't find, may be qualified to talk about clutter. I'm certainly in that category, and if you look at the room behind me, you can see that there's a little bit of clutter right where you're looking. In the next few minutes, I'm going to try to paint a picture of what it's like to live with clutter and some reasons why living with clutter is not the best thing to do. What I hope to show is that as you eliminate the clutter in your life, you'll live a happier, healthier life. Joseph Ferrari, he's a PhD from DePaul University in Chicago, said that an overabundance of possessions that collectively create chaotic, disorderly living spaces is the definition of clutter. So look around you and see if you're having a hard time finding a place to sit down, or maybe finding a place to set a bowl down so that you can eat your dinner. That is clutter. The greatest tendency that comes from living with clutter is that you have a tendency to procrastinate. Clutter tends to give you a scattered way of thinking and a difficult challenge in focusing on the task that's at hand. Here's some of the reasons that I have found that clutter is a problem. One, you begin to have a lower subjective sense of well-being. So what does that mean? A lower sense of well-being. You feel that you're less, or you're not as good as maybe you could be. You underrate yourself relative to others, especially in the days of Facebook where everyone seems to have a perfect life. You may look around you and see clutter and think of yourself as something much less than those people who live those perfect lives. Another area where it's troublesome is that it can lead to unhealthy eating habits. Maybe that's surprising to you, but if you're not thinking clearly, you're not obviously making good choices, and that can extend into the choices you make in your food choices. Another is that you have poorer mental health. And we already sort of touched on it with the subjective well-being and the inability to make conscious and good choices when it comes to selecting the food that you eat, but you will find yourself more prone to depression and to moods when you have to live with clutter in your life. You also have less efficient visual processing. So if you're constantly looking at a pile here and a pile there, and you're looking at how things are scattered around, you can't discern as easily between one thing and another, and you literally have a difficult time processing what you're seeing. I think that we've swept this all sort of together into the pattern of unclear thinking. Now, unclear thinking can lead to all kinds of troublesome behaviors. One might be poor financial decisions. Another might be poor decisions in your relationships, or poor decisions about what you do as a career or how you live your life. So there's lots of reasons why living with clutter is perhaps less perfect than you would like it to be. So let's look at some of the benefits of what happens when you lose the clutter in your life. You begin to have better focus. You can see things and see even opportunities you can see more clearly when you're not completely surrounded by clutter. You begin to feel less stress in your life. There's less pressure. So often when we're surrounded by clutter, we have this notion that, well, that's something I've got to get to. I've got to get to that. But then you never get to it. And so you build up some stress between the idea that you've got to get to something and that you're never really getting there. So less stress comes when you lose the clutter. You may also find yourself being less prone to procrastination. Again, that whole procrastination thing comes when you're not thinking clearly and you're not making decisions that help you to move forward in your life. You'll find that you'll also have a better ability to save money, to think more clearly about your financial decisions, and to learn how to put some away. You would also achieve the advantage of having less likelihood that you're going to have allergies. Clutter is a trap for dust and mites and things that might end up affecting you and causing you to have inflammation in your nasal passage or in your in other areas. So that is something that comes out of losing clutter, is that you find that there are more and more clean surfaces in your home. Another one, and we talked about this in terms of the disadvantages, but another one is that you'll begin to have better eating habits. You'll be able to think more clearly about the choices that you have to make, and you'll start to think, wow, I could maybe have a salad instead of a piece of fried chicken that I bring into the house because I can't figure out how to organize cooking or organize my kitchen. So there are plenty of disadvantages to having clutter and plenty of advantages to losing clutter. So what I'd like to do is maybe conclude by saying that I had a woman who was in my ward that I helped move when I was the bishop of the ward, and she lived in a house where it had gotten to the point where she had let things go so far that she was literally having vermin in her kitchen. There were rats, there were cockroaches, there were all kinds of nasty critters in her house, and she had no idea what she had or didn't have. And when she moved out, she was initially quite distressed because she was letting go of all kinds of things that she thought had value. But as she moved into a new space and found that she had lots of open space and freedom, her life literally changed. Now, I don't mean that she changed entirely and everything was perfect thereafter, but Kathy found that she had some freedom that she had not had before. When you think of clutter, you may also want to think about how that losing clutter might help you in your school. I know that I have to keep things organized to be able to complete all of the assignments that are necessary for me to complete to get my schoolwork done. And when I'm surrounded by clutter, I find that those tasks are far more difficult. So in conclusion, let me just suggest that as we lose the clutter in our lives and begin to think and act more clearly, we will end up living a happier life. Thank you.